Yes, a hearty good morning to another one of our Monday morning sort of sessions, or wherever you are in the world, whatever time it may be, but our Monday sessions nonetheless. So, over the years, customers have asked us, in terms of when we are marketing our speakers and making suggestions on our proposals and, putting our speakers forward and the whole matching process that you're all very familiar with. We've been often asked for two different things. One is a short video clip, just a bit of a show reel or just some sort of indication about how the speaker really, not just their content, but how they're connecting with audiences. Secondly, though, over and above that, we've been asked for a sort of a longer clip, sometimes maybe 20 minutes long to get a more of a sense about the actual content that's going in. Because, in 3 or 4 minutes, you only pick so much up. You can pick up that, oh, this is an engaging speaker, looks exciting, but the content, is it exactly what we're looking for? So that is what these kind of sessions are really all about. This is a 20-minute sort of insight. In the case of today, it's with Bilal about what sort of meaty content. Well, what could you really expect should you book Bilal for your conference? And of course, we would encourage you to look strongly at him. He's a fantastic speaker. So with that said, I'm going to hand you over to Bilal himself. Take us away, Bilal. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Paul. I first and foremost, thank you very much for this opportunity, and I sincerely hope that I will be able to challenge the listeners' worldview, because today with AI in the picture, previously, we had only technology to worry about, and now added to that, we've got AI. Our worldview is constantly being tested, and the future, as they say, is just not what it used to be. So I'm going to be I'm going to be challenging some of the notions that we've already had about a lot of things in my presentation, and which is entitled Visionary Parenting in the Age of AI. I'm going to start off with a story about myself. Now, a few years back, I was teaching a group of grade 8 kids coding, and specifically, I was teaching them how to build their own video games using coding. And I had taught them a specific algorithm, and they went home and they needed to work on it and come back and demonstrate it to me the next day. So the one kid comes back and says to me the next day, "Sir, I found a better way of doing it than you. I know what you taught me, but I think my way is better." And that's the kid with the glasses standing behind me with the blue hoodie. So nonetheless, I was quite surprised by this, that I, as a software engineer, was beaten by a grade 8 learner. And so I decided to investigate. And this picture was taken specifically at that point where I was studying his code to see if this kid really beat me or not. And the look on my face says it all, that I was actually beaten by a grade 8 learner, which was incredible. It was really incredible. His code was shorter than mine, it was more efficient than mine. And it was amazing that a grade 8 learner with no prior training in software development could solve such a complex problem. In fact, he solved a problem where there was no problem. He identified the problem and he solved it. Now, this struck me on a number of levels. It struck me in a sense that I definitely underestimated what kids are capable of. And I also looked at this is what we need for the future. Now, in this age of AI, what we are doing, what people generally tend to do is ask the wrong questions. We ask anything from the mundane, like, how do I become more productive with AI, to the completely wrong question, like, will AI take my job away? But my focus is not on either of these. My focus is this: how can we thrive in the age of AI? How do we become the change in the age of AI? How do we own the age of AI? And not just us, but the next generation. How does the next generation take ownership of this age of AI? And that's the big question that we need to be asking. And that's the question that I'm going to be answering in my presentation. So the first thing that I learned having gone down this rabbit hole of investigating this intelligence that was demonstrated by this kid. And trust me when I tell you, I've run hundreds of, well, I've taught hundreds, if not thousands, of young people how to code since then. And I've seen the same pattern recurring over and over and over again, where young people surprised me with what they were capable of doing. And bear in mind also that I used to be a maths teacher. I taught maths and physics up to grade 12 level. And I've never seen this kind of problem solving abilities. I've never seen this type of intelligence demonstrated in my math classes as I saw in my coding classes. And I can tell you, coding is as difficult as, if not more difficult than mathematics. But yet, there was something about coding that really attracted these kids. And then it made me realize that coding is not just about technology. It's not just about learning to give the computer some instructions, but perhaps coding can be a very powerful learning tool that enables kids to unleash their creativity, unleash their intelligence using computers. So the first thing that I realized is that we are going to need some sort of vision above and beyond just, well, I'm going to get my kid educated. Now, we all have this mindset that I'm going to send my kid to primary school and then high school and then to a university, and then my job is done because she's going to go and she's going to qualify and get a job. But trust me, it is not like that anymore. And the root of our problem is right there. When we think that getting an education or getting a university degree is some sort of guarantee that a person is going to get a job and be successful in their career. Those days are gone. In fact, those days were gone like 25 years ago. But we still hang on to this because that's what we know. So we need a new vision for our kids. And that vision is more in the line of how do I prepare my kid to be a an expert and a change maker in the age of AI. And if anything, having taught at schools and universities, I can tell you that they are not being adequately prepared. And that's where the problem lies. You see, this generation that we are dealing with, and I had an interaction with some kids about 2 weeks ago, and the one kid said to me, he gave me a very, very beautiful answer to one of my questions. My question was, do you like mathematics? He said no. And I appreciate his honesty there. And I asked him why. Why don't you like maths? He said, because I don't see the sense of it. I don't see why I should be doing maths. I don't see why this maths is valuable to me. See that? This is why I call them Generation Y. This generation we are dealing with is purpose driven. They are a generation who will go to the depths and breadth of what they want to do if they see the why in it, if they see the value in it. And if they don't see the value in it, they're not going to move. Now, I come from a generation, I'm a 1975 model. I come from a generation where we just did things because we were told to do it, because the teacher said it, or because we were afraid to go in, visit the principal, and because we were afraid of our parents. The last thing you wanted was a complaint to come from school because that would make it even worse at home. So we did things because we were required to do. But today's generation is different. They need the why. That's why I like to call them Gen Y or Generation Y, because they are purpose driven and they need to see value in what they are doing. And when they do, then there's no stopping them. Then they are an unstoppable generation. The third thing that I came across in my research, and this was incredible, what do Mozart, Shakespeare, Alexander the Great all have in common? It's this, that they became achievers while they were still in their teens. They achieved more in their teens than most of us achieve in our lives. And so when I looked at the list, it was incredible. There was such a long list of what we call today child prodigies. And then I realized when I went deeper into the research, when I went into psychological studies, that these were not child prodigies at all. These were just normal kids like mine and yours, just like my teen and your teen. So the question is then, if there was nothing particularly special about them, how did they achieve so much? I mean, uh, Beethoven wrote his first orchestra at the age of 13. That was incredible, you know, and I'm saying this was being played out in playhouses all over Europe. It was incredible. So, how was this possible? The answer is actually coming from our kids. You know, when they tell us, Mom, I'm not a child, there's actually some deep truth to that. And the deep truth, according to psychological studies, is that we as parents, as society, tend to infantilize our kids. And in doing so, we underestimate them. And in doing so, we keep their potential locked in, we keep their potential trapped, and we don't allow them to express themselves. So psychologists went and they looked at these the situation with our youth and what is going on with them. I mean, why is there so much of teenage angst? Why is there so much of depression? Why is there so much of, particularly in the West, like in the United States, the highest number of deaths among teenagers comes from suicide, which is a tragedy by the power 10. It's an extreme disaster. What is going on here? And they found that a lot of it has to do with the fact that they are being infantilized. In no pre-industrial society was there such a thing as a teenager. You were either a child or you were an adult. And the moment a person reached the what we call teenagers, they were allowed to choose their vocation. They were allowed to find their own path in life. So when our kids are telling us, I'm not a child, remember there's truth to that, because there's this internal conflict that's going on inside them, which is their minds, their bodies, their emotions are saying to them, I'm an adult now. But the parents and society and school is telling them, you're a kid, do as I say. So this internal conflict results in a lot of angst and a lot of problems for the child. So the next thing we need to do is to never underestimate our kids and to respect them as adults. I know this is going to make me very unpopular for saying it, but it needs to be said. This is what psychologists across the world, particularly in the United States, are saying. And if you think that's bad, wait for the next slide. Now, I'm one who believes that we need to give our kids as much exposure to technology as possible. Now, I know a lot of parents are not going to like this, but if you think about this critically, it's not technology that we are afraid of when it comes to our kids. It's abuse of technology. It's mindless scrolling, doom scrolling on social media. It's the evil that's out there, like bullying, like cyber bullying. These are the things that we are afraid of. But when you look at computers as a tool for learning, as a tool for creating, as a tool for processing information and creating information, then no one is going to dispute that there isn't a better tool than a computer or a mobile device for that, because that is what kids love. And if they love something, why not take them towards or guide them towards using it for good? Look, it's not even an adult thing anymore. I've spoken to a number of youth, and there's been research done that they have this term called a brain rot now, which is the when you consume too much of content, particularly short form videos, it dulls your brain rather than sharpens your brain. You don't actually learn much from it. Now, they are using this term brain rot because they are seeing the harm of it to themselves. They are seeing the harm of social media. They know that there's something unpleasant about this. But what they are waiting for is for us to show them an alternative. So until we don't show that alternative, they're going to be stuck in that infinite loop of social media, knowing that it's bad for them, but not knowing what to do with it, and then sort of spiraling downwards into just self harm through this whole idea of brain rot, through their brains just not coping with all of this. So if we teach them how to use computers to learn, process, create, they will be the leaders of tomorrow. And there's no better way to do that than through teaching them to code. Because with coding, you are reversing the role. With coding, it's not the computer that's teaching or programming the child. It's the child that is teaching the computer. It's the child that is programming the computer and telling the computer, this is what I want from you, and I want you to do this. And if you don't, then I'm going to continue until it's done. See how the whole thing changes around? Unlike with social media and doom scrolling, it's just, you're being told what to do, you've been told what to think. But with coding, you are thinking originally and you're telling the computer what you are thinking and what it needs to do. Now, where does this all lead up to? It leads up to this picture, and I will conclude on this case study. Now, this, when I showed this to various audiences, they wonder, what is it? What is it? Is it some kind of jungle gym? Is it a kids' playground thing? But actually, this is one of the most advanced pieces of technology on the planet. It's an MRI scanner in a kid's hospital. Now, this MRI scanner didn't always look like this. But the thing is that the creator of it, the chief engineer, a gentleman by the name of Doug Deeds, who worked for General Electric at the time, the manufacturers of this machine, when he went to a hospital to see this machine, this new machine in operation, he saw that kids were terrified of it. There was one particular child who came in with her father, tiny little girl, lean, emaciated child. And the moment she saw this machine, she grabbed her father's leg and she started to scream and cry that she doesn't want to go into that scary machine. And so the nurse had to call in an anesthetist to knock her out so that she could do her job. So Doug went up to the operator and she said, "Nurse, this machine doesn't need anesthesia. Why are you knocking out this child?" So the nurse said, "Well, look at her condition. How am I going to get her into this machine if she's hysterical like this?" And so he understood that whereas this technology is great, the way that it's being used is not. So he went back to his team and he said to his team, "Guys, there's something that needs to be done." And so they went through a process, and I'll show you guys that process. And what they came up with is this concept. They didn't reinvent the machine, they didn't redesign the machine. All they did was make the machine more user friendly. And not only did they add these decals on it, but they also scripted out a narrative for the nurse to read as the child entered the MRI room. So the nurse would read something like, "Hey, welcome aboard, Mihati. We're going to take a ride on the pirate ship, and you're going to hear all these sounds and these whirrings and clankings, but don't worry, that's just the anchor and the chains and this and that." So the child became part of that experience. It became almost a role play rather than a serious medical procedure that she was going to go through. And Doug Deeds says, "I knew we had succeeded when I went, subsequent to all these changes, I went back to that hospital and a little girl came in and used the scanner and she came out and she said, 'Dad, can we please come back tomorrow?'" So he said, now we had succeeded because we took what was a terrifying experience and we converted it into an experience where the child wants a repeat of. So if you think about the thinking that went into this machine, you'll notice that Doug Deeds and his team went through what I like to call my C6 framework for becoming change drivers, right? The C6 framework that I've developed, it starts off with critical thinking. And going clockwise, we see that Doug started with critical thinking. He had to think about his own creation critically. And it wasn't the creation that was the problem. It was the communication, the way that this machine was presented to the children. And so he went back to his team and he said, guys, we can change this. So there was the change mindset that came with that. It wasn't this that, hey, this thing is already made, this thing has won technology awards upon awards. Perhaps we should just leave it like that. No, they said, look, we can and we will change this within certain parameters. Obviously, we couldn't recreate the machine. It cost millions of rands or dollars to build. Then they went into problem solving, complex problem solving mode, and they put their heads together. And then they realized that the problem had to do with communication. Because think about it, it was the same machine before and after. What was different? What was different was how the machine was presented to the children. That's communication. I mean, we think of communication just as speaking and listening, but communication comes in so many different forms. In the case of the machine, it came as decals, it came as stickers, it came as the narrative. So then they had to, once they realized it was a communication issue, that's when they unleashed their creativity, collaborated with child psychologists to come up with a better way of presenting this machine to them, and they came up with the final solution. Now, if we can teach our kids these skills, give me 12 years to teach a child these skills here. Leave the maths and leave the English and leave all the other things we learn at school. Just these kids will become the change makers and the owners of the future. And I'd like to, at some stage, discuss some of the programs that I've personally developed to harness the potential of our kids. With those few words, I will conclude, and here are my contact details, and we'll open up for questions. And I hope that I've intrigued you enough that you will want to book me and invite me to your business, to your community, to your schools, so that we can discuss how coding can unleash children's creativity. And in fact, we could do a coding exercise together at your office. How's that? Thanks a lot. Let's open up for questions.
Thank you, Bilal. I wanted to ask you, I mean, and this is intriguing. I mean, a lot of us on the call have got kids, and if we don't have kids, we know kids. We're close to kids, relatives, and that sort of thing. So all of this is good to hear. Now, how would you encourage us in the workplace? Those of us that sort of already past the schooling days, and now we're in the workplace. How would you encourage us more to become part of the change? Should we be having more of an interest in coding? My son is an avid coder. He's learning ethical hacking. He's just continued that journey since the age of, I don't know, a very early age. And he believes in that as well. And but for those of us that wouldn't have a clue about how to start coding, do we? I mean, should we be embracing ChatGPT a little bit more? Some of us feel that it kind of changes our personality if we do that, and but we shouldn't be afraid of these kind of things. I don't know if I've got a proper, clear, succinct question for you, but are you picking up any of the things I'm trying to say to you? How do we relate back some of what you're saying and become part of the change?
Yeah, I get what you're saying 100%. So I think when you look at what I've said now, the focus was primarily on kids. And now when you're talking about a person in the corporate world, such as yourself and myself, who already have white hair and gray hair, is it too late for us? And the answer is no, it's not too late for us because we are always learning, right? The key is the C6, these six C's that, in the framework that I've developed. That's what the ultimate outcome needs to be, the critical thinking and the change mindset, complex problem solving. Coding, for me, I've found is one of the best ways to get kids to learn this framework because coding has all of that encapsulated. It's like a multivitamin of exceptional benefits for children's minds. And like I say, it's not just about the technology; it's about their minds. It's about opening up places of their mind that they didn't even know existed. Now, for the rest of us, I mean, coding is a good option to learn some basic coding. I mean, I met a gentleman, I would say in his late 60s, early 70s, about 2 weeks ago, who said he had done one of my free coding exercises on YouTube. And I was shocked that, wow, this is an old person. And he did it. So I asked him how he found it. He said he really enjoyed it. So it's not that each of us needs to become a master coder or a software engineer, but just the act of coding is a mental challenge. It's like a gym for the mind, and it can help us to, just as it helps kids, it can help us as adults to unleash our creativity and to get our minds working. Having said that, coding is not the only way to get to these six skills. I mean, there's lots and lots of different avenues for it, such as just engaging in some creative activities, reading a lot, doing a lot of problem solving like Sudoku and things. So there's lots of ways to get it. But for me, I feel that having taught kids maths and having taught kids coding, I feel that the best thing for kids in particular is coding because of that affinity with technology, which we cannot remove. It's there. It's imprinted. They're born with it, right? Almost. So that's what I feel from a kid's perspective. But for the rest of us, it's not too late. We can also learn these skills.
Mm, mm. I got you. And then, just getting onto the sort of the subject of using AI a lot more, do you think we should be embracing it a lot more than we are? Things like Chat GPT. I mean, I don't know why I'm so stuck on this, but I mean, there's other software applications, isn't there, that we should be plugging into more? Do you think people are a little bit afraid of it in some ways? And because the message is very clear in large organizations. You kind of need to kind of embrace it, get involved with it, or be left behind. So you'd obviously would encourage that. And would you have any sort of tips on how to make it easier for people to you know to get more into it quicker?
Yeah, I think there's a kind of a this I've seen a bit of a contrasting attitude towards AI technologies like ChatGPT and DeepSeek in the corporate sector, right? I mean, I last week I did a workshop with EMSA, with USB, and I sense this that on one hand, more so than most other technologies, there's this eagerness to use AI for greater uh, proficiency at work, for streamlining their work. So people are willing and they are using AI. But now, in direct contrast to this, is this overall fear that where is this all going? Where is this AI going? Is this going to take our jobs away? So, yes, people are using it on one hand, but they're also afraid of it on the other. And I think that largely comes from over exaggeration in the media and on social media, on YouTube, where you get people saying things like AI is going to replace human beings, or some go all the way towards absolute dystopian scenarios like the Terminator movies. World War III is going to be set off by AI. Now, none of that is true. And neither is AI going to suddenly become alive at all. Like, in the Terminator movies, again, like the Skynet thing came alive and it decided that the human beings are the problem. That's not going to happen. And we can go into a philosophical and a scientific discussion on that, and I can prove that it's not going to happen. So what we need is a two-pronged approach, right? The two-pronged approach is how do we use AI for greater efficiency at work, but also how do we embrace AI for the future, overcome our fear of AI, and become change makers, become owners of this technology in the future. Coming to your final question, do I teach how to use AI? Yes, I have an entire workshop just on how to use AI for greater efficiency at work. Different types of AI we discuss. I mean, ChatGPT is just one type of AI. It's a large language model, incredible AI, but you got tons of other AI like expert systems, image generators, pattern recognition, robots. These are all different types of AI, and we unpack the different types of AI and how, depending on the specific industries, how we can use AI for more productivity and efficiency at work. So yeah, we could always do a workshop like that.
Hmm. Thanks, Bilal. And there's a question from Nikki as well. Just see if there might be some duplication, but how can we use technology effectively? What can we do differently with the same technology? Communication is such a big part of it, not just focusing on the actual technology. And I did notice on your C6, it actually boiled down, the real challenge was actually, or the solution was actually in the communication, wasn't it? So
Correct.
did you pick anything up from that question then that you could help Nikki with, that you haven't covered already?
Yeah, I think we it's a deep and a very fundamental question, because when you think about the age we are living in, right? We call it the age of AI, we call it the age of information technology. We are supposed to be master communicators, because AI and technology in general, social media, chat, is all about communication. So why is it that we have this problem where there is so much of breakdown in communication? If you look at it in the home between parent and child, we talk about the generation gap. At work, we talk about the gap between management and the rest of the team. In relationships, if you study, relationships that are breaking down, the main issue is a lack of communication. So it seems like, whereas we're living in an age of light speed communication through, fiber networks, at the same time we are struggling to communicate with each other. And I think when you drill down, the problem is that we are not taught proper communication skills, period. So whether it's at school or at university or at home, we are not being taught how to use this technology effectively to communicate, and the different types of communication that are out there. And I'll give you an example, right? When I spoke at the Department of Basic Education conference last year, one of the questions that were posed to me in front of maybe a good couple of hundred people was, uh, how do we deal with AI in exam scenarios? And my answer is standard, that we need to change the exams to become more in tune with the age of AI. Because what is an examination? An examination is just memorizing a preset, a set of questions and then regurgitating them in our papers. But communication is not that. Communication is so much more. What if the examination on a specific topic was, let's say the topic was heroes of the freedom struggle in South Africa, rather than asking kids to just regurgitate information onto a piece of paper, why not ask them to go home, do some research using ChatGPT or DeepSeek or any AI, and then prepare a beautiful presentation out of that, and then make a YouTube video out of that presentation, a little video documentary, and present that to the teacher. Wouldn't that be so much better to enhance their communication skills than just getting them to regurgitate some facts onto a piece of paper? That would be so much more effective as a means of communication. Then when we talk about creativity, using graphics, using images, using videos, we need to incorporate more of that into schools. And ultimately, I also found that one of the benefits of coding for kids is communication. Because, see, as human beings, sometimes we tend to be vague in our communications. And it happens to me in my business, where even my senior most staff sometimes give me such vague communications, it becomes frustrating. And, especially on a Monday morning, I feel like lashing out at them that, why don't you clarify what you're saying? Right? Okay, I don't do that. But with computers, when you are coding a computer, you have to be so precise that everything that you need that computer to do, you need to be explicit about it. So when children get used to that, to that kind of mindset that I need to be concise, I need to be precise in my communication, that is a transferable skill to interhuman communications. It becomes a key factor in their person to person communications, that conciseness, that preciseness in communication, nothing taken for granted, nothing implied. Whatever you need to say, you are saying it directly. And that I think will help a lot. In fact, in last week's workshop with EBSA, I actually I gave some case studies as to how a person could communicate in one way and not see the results, and then communicate the exact same message in a different way and see much better results than that. So I think if I mean, to answer the question, we need to teach kids. Again, you know, the slide where I said learn, process, create, learn, process, create. Right now, children, when they take the devices from us, when they take the phones and the tablet PCs, what they are doing is they're just consuming large amounts of meaningless data. They are not taught how to process, learn, process, and create. When they do that, communication comes bundled with it.
Thank you, Bilal. I'm going to hand you back to Kathy. I mean, that was a great answer. Nikki seemed to be very, very responsive to that.
Clive?
Oh,
I think Clive wanted to ask a question.
Yes, hi everyone. Hi Bilal. It was more of a comment. I suppose there could be a question embedded in there. As we were speaking about the importance of listening to children and them having a voice, I was trying to think of it in the work context, and could one relay it to how some corporates sort of suppress inputs and ideas of junior employees by virtue of them being young and inexperienced. And sometimes some of the best ideas to take the company forward could come from these young, full of energy employees. And I suppose what you're saying about communication is also creating an environment where employees, whether young or old, feel empowered to come forward with ideas without feeling like, they're going to be tossed aside because they are young and inexperienced. And these young kids that we're talking about, they're the ones that then grow up and start coming to organizations that we work in. And, they come up with these amazing ideas because of their exposure to technology and them not being afraid to play around with technology. And I think what you were speaking to speaks to just us as organizations, leadership being open to creative young minds and their inputs.
Yeah, I love the statement slash. I think there is a response I can give, although you didn't specifically ask a question. But I'd like to respond with a situation that I faced a few weeks ago. See, I was consulting an engineering firm in Johannesburg on bringing about efficiency, on business growth and efficiency. It's something that I do in my part time. And one of the complaints that came from the CEO was, well, the co-CEO, there's two founders slash CEOs, was this, that, we've got a developer here who's a young guy, he's in his early 20s, and he just does his own thing. He works in his own hours. He does his own thing. He's really good at what he does, no doubt about that, and he solved a lot of problems. But his whole attitude to work and his own times, and some of the radical ideas he comes up with is becoming, it grates us. So I said to them, you know, I know this problem because in my business, the average age is about 26 years old of my team, right? And I understand this, what you are going through and what you are facing here. But you need to understand that this person is running a different operating system than you are. You don't try to run an Android app on an iPhone. This is what I'm saying, to use the technology parlance. In other words, what I'm saying to him is, to that CEO, is this, that if that guy works best at midnight, and if he is solving problems, why not judge him on deliverables rather than on 9 to 5? Because there's a lot of young people who do their best work in the dark of night for some reason, where an old guy like me will be fast asleep. These guys, that's their creative hour, the dark and the peace of night. Or I know there's a few software developers who can't do their work unless they got their headphones on, listening to heavy metal music. Now, for me, heavy metal music disrupts my brain waves. I can't think when there's any music happening. So they operate differently. So what I'm getting at is that what we as businesses need to do, and this is going to take a lot of culture change, it's going to take a lot of time. We need to embrace the fact that these people are coming with different ways of doing things, with different ideas, with different mindsets that sometimes may be in complete contradiction to our ideas, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because I can give you lots and lots of case studies where my younger team members, because we've established this culture of idea sharing, my young team members have come up with brilliant ideas that that were just infinitely more interesting and more successful than my own ideas around things. So I've kind of, stepped back in the business and just sort of give strategy and let them come up with ways of implementing the strategy. And I think what we need is to encourage more companies to, at the very least, create an idea sharing platform where these people have their say. Sometimes, it's not it's not just about. Sometimes it's just about being given the privilege of sharing your ideas, knowing that it's being evaluated, even if it's not implemented now, implemented later. I think a lot of the young people have the emotional intelligence to say, well, look, I've had my say. Perhaps it will be accepted, perhaps not. I hope it will be accepted. And if it is, great. So that's the one thing. So they have that understanding, many of them. The other thing is that, see, it comes back to to whose question about communication. I think Nikki's question about communication. That, see, when my teammates come up to me with an idea, then the first thing I do is I ask them to validate that idea, and I play devil's advocate, and I grill them on that idea, whether that, to test them whether they've thought it through. And 9 out of 10 times, they come up with, because they know the culture of the company, they know what's going to happen if they come to me with an idea. So 9 out of 10 times, they got the answers ready. That here's my idea, and here's my logic and my reasoning why it will work, and then it's accepted. So I think it needs to be a two-way thing, right? You can't just come up with ideas and expect it's gonna be taken because it's a gut feel. Because in business, I mean, we can't just always operate like that, especially in larger businesses. So we need to teach these young recruits, our younger team members, the less experienced one. It's, yes, your ideas will be valued, but you need to back it up with evidence. You need to back it up with a logical reasoning so that we can give it consideration. I saw a hand went up earlier. I don't know who. I think it was Millicent.
Yes,
Yes, it was Melissa Bilal.
Oh, Melissa, how are you?
Hi. I'm good, thanks, and yourself.
Very well, thanks.
That's good. That's good. My question is sort of in sync with Clive's question or statement. Bilal, you mentioned that the Generation Y employees are the curious ones and they ask more questions. And you also mentioned that they're more expressive and we should not keep their potential locked in. Now, my question is, how do the leaders of today prepare for this generation? And maybe what advice can you give these leaders to embrace this more expressive generation? And maybe do these leaders need more skills? And if so, what are those skills that they should be learning?
I think they should learn my C6 framework. I think they should learn critical thinking, change mindset. Because, I mean, think about it. It's all of that, right? I mean, a young person comes up to me with an idea that completely contradicts my own ideas. And, for example, I gave an instruction and they went and did something completely different. It takes it takes critical thinking to evaluate, is this a bad idea? And if I think it's a bad idea, I need to question myself. Why do I think it's a bad idea? And then the change mindset is where most businesses fail. Fortunately, the engineering firm that I consulted a few weeks ago, they had a bit of a change mindset, so they were ready for embracing change. But by and large, most of the businesses that I consult, you notice there is no change mindset. It's just a matter of the most deadliest disease in any business is when somebody tells you, but this is how we've always done it. If they say that, then you know there's a rigid mindset. You know that mindset is cast in stone, like a pyramid, and there's no changing that. So I think what we need is to take the C6 framework. Like, look, there's a lot of people talking about these things on an individual basis. In fact, I met one of the speakers at the showcase we did in Voda World, and he said to me, I've been speaking about creativity my whole life, but I've never seen it in a framework. I've never zoomed out of just creativity and looked at it as a piece of a bigger framework, which is my C6 framework. So what I've done was I've taken these highly critical individual skills and I've put them into one overall framework, right? So it's nothing new that I've invented or anything, but it's just that I've taken what 20 or 30 different people were talking about, what I read in probably 50 or 60 different books, and I've put it all together into a change maker framework. And that's why I say, don't embrace change and don't be afraid of change, rather be the change. And through the C6, you will be the change. And that's what our leaders need. So if we can speak to the CEOs of some of the big companies in South Africa and teach them the C6 framework, I think we're going to transform the culture in this country.
That's such good advice. So I don't know if there's anybody else who has any questions or if we should wrap up. Okay, so I think we're wrapping up then. USBI would like to thank everybody for taking time out of their days to see this awesome speaker, Bilal. It was a really great session, and thank you very much for taking time out of your day as well. So next week we're going to be having Andre Norman, another one of our 5-star speakers, but this session will be in the afternoon as he is based in the US. So thanks everybody again, and hopefully we'll see you next week.